I wrote this book 36 years ago. I was unhappily married and I needed an outlet. And I wrote and wrote and wrote. And what was fascinating to me is the characters came alive and they guided me. They told me to do this and they led here and that. And before I knew it, I had a novel. And the book is fiction. The only thing that is not fiction is the bipolar illness of the main character. And having the bipolar illness made it much more difficult for her to extricate herself, for her to become strong and powerful and independent, because she would go from feeling really, really good, and that was kind of the manic phase, to feeling really, really bad, and that was the depressive stage where she lost self-esteem. So it was hard for her to buck against an abusive husband, because she could be very strong, but she could also be very weak. And a lot of women are verbally abused and they don't even realize it. Put-downs can be so insidious and so subtle that you don't even realize you're being put down, and your self-esteem gets eroded, and unfortunately it would leak over to the children. And they would have also probably less feeling about themselves, because she could not build them up as they need to be built up, because she doesn't feel built up and she doesn't feel good about herself. And if you don't feel good about yourself, that's what you filter out to other people. Well, if she's strong enough, as this character became strong enough, she can fight back. And she just can say, you know, that old saying from the movies, I'm just not going to take it anymore. And she won't take it anymore. Either she gets divorced or she turns it off totally and just ignores the person, lives her own separate life. But if you become strong enough and your self-esteem, and I know that's a bandy word, self-image maybe, is good enough, you won't take it. You just won't take it. So I would say that most of what is written, and certainly the description of the illness, is all correct. And most of it is me, exaggerated in certain areas. And I didn't know what I was going to do with the truth, or not. To just say the main character was the main character and had nothing to do with me, which is what I was originally going to do. And then I decided I could help people, and they could read it, and they could understand it a little better. It was very hard for me to own that. I finally owned it, and see, I hid it a whole lifetime since I'm 17 years old. I never told, and my flirting skills actually came in handy because I was extrovert. I smiled and I knew how to listen and make people feel good, and that helped the illness because it got me out of myself and it got me connected, which a lot of people with this illness are very isolated, but I wasn't. My brother-in-law took me to a doctor and said, this is not just normal teenage angst. There's something wrong here. And they didn't know what it was. And they sent me to a psychologist, and they didn't have the medication. And I knew I was so different, and I knew I suffered. I really suffered. I had terrible, terrible feelings, and often would wish I was an inanimate object because there was pain involved. For me, it's a very empty, sinking feeling, like grief. It's the best way I can describe it. Empty, sinking feeling, and you kind of don't want to go on. It's just painful. And then, of course, there's the other side of it where, God, I could conquer the world, and I do. When I'm manic, I do conquer the world. I write books, I do lectures, I go on trips, I do a lot of things. The only trouble is you can crash. Now, when I was bipolar and they didn't know what it was about, I was like this and like this and like this and like this. Now, because of medication, they've cut off the points. So it's kind of like this. And if I had to tell you the most important thing in treating bipolar, it's medication. It is a chemical imbalance. It is not a weakness. It is not something somebody is frail or can't handle. Or it is an imbalance, and the choice is not there. Medication makes you level. And of course, the doctor discovered lithium, which is the main medication for bipolar, and it's wonderful. It's a miracle. So the illness shaped who I was, but somewhere I had an inner strength that would overcome the illness as much as was possible. And I don't know. All I know is my main character turned out really super, and that's because I have a good imagination. And I wanted her to. I wanted to have a happy ending, you know. I think my ending kind of leaves you a little bit up in the air, but you kind of feel like she's going to get a positive result out of this whole thing, and a nice man in her life.